Missing link. Animals don't just talk in hoppers, they level up. The premise is already a clue. A young activist gets her consciousness transferred into a lifelike robotic beaver, then sent into a real beaver community to blend in. That isn't magic, it's interface tech, human thought writing inside an animal shell. Even the marketing leans into translation. Phones, symbols, animals reacting to intent, not just tone. The beaver body is basically a wearable dictionary. Fans fold that into the shared timeline idea. First, animals get smarter, then they learn our language, then they learn our tools, then they stop needing us. Hoppers sits perfectly in that gap. It's the step where animals start using human-grade communication and coordination on purpose. Plans, signals, missions, maybe an organized uprising. The weird part is how cleanly it bridges worlds. A robotic animal suggests human engineering. A wild animal society suggests nature pushing back. Two timelines colliding in one body. Of course, it could simply be Pixar building one new universe with a slick sci-fi premise. A standalone story doesn't owe anybody lore, but if this is the missing chapter, it's the first domino. Because once animals can access human tech, the balance flips fast, and the cute movie becomes the start of something bigger. New threat. The villain in Toy Story 5 might not be a cowboy, a bear, or a broken doll. It might be the screen on the coffee table. Toy Story has always been about replacement. Buzz arrives, Woody spirals. Jessie shows up, priorities shift. Forky exists, and suddenly, toy can be anything. But now the rival isn't another plaything. It's the smart system that never sleeps, never breaks, and never needs imagination to feel alive. You can feel the runway in the later films. Bonnie drifts from game to game. Toys sit in closets longer. A kid's attention is sliced into notifications, videos, and autoplay. So the theory goes, Toy Story 5 upgrades the threat from one character to an entire environment. Smart speakers, tablets, nanny cams, AI friends, digital pets, a room that talks back, tracks you, and fills silence without ever picking up Woody. And get this, the franchise already hints at mass-produced identity. Buzz isn't unique. He's a shelf full of identical units with identical catchphrases. Still, Pixar could just be modernizing the message for a new generation. Tech as a gentle lesson, not a doom story. But if technology becomes the antagonist here, it quietly explains why later Pixar worlds feel less human-centered. Not because humans vanished overnight, because they outsourced childhood itself. Where'd they go? Cars is built on a ghost world. Radiator Springs sits on Route 66 with motels, diners, sidewalks, traffic lights, an entire human civilization frozen in place with nobody to use it. And Pixar never even jokes about the missing species. No museums, no plaques, no founders, just the assumption that cars inherited everything and kept rolling. That's why the humans are gone theory won't stop. The infrastructure is too specific. Doorways scaled for people, gas stations with tiny shops, stadiums and grandstands, motel rooms with beds that cars don't need, bathrooms that make no sense. It feels like a set abandoned mid-shoot, except the characters treat it like home. Supporters push it further. These cars aren't simply alive, they're the next operating system. Self-driving tech that outlived its creators, learned personalities, built culture, and repurposed the leftovers into a society. Racing becomes ritual. Brands become religion. Sure, the simplest answer is also the official one. It's a stylized cars-only universe, and the human stuff is just visual comedy. But the silence is the creepy part, because if humans did disappear, the story isn't just about winning a cup. It's about machines inheriting a world, and never once asking what happened to the people who built it. Who's missing? Inside Out's control room looks crowded until you notice the gaps. Riley has joy, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, 5 voices, 5 levers, and yet headquarters is built like it's expecting more. Extra space around the console, extra rails, hallways that lead to places the emotions don't understand. Then there are the locked areas, the vault, the subconscious, the deep, dark, secret corner where memories get shoved away instead of processed. In the first film, parts of her mind get rewritten fast. Personality islands collapse, and a single core memory can recolor everything. That's why the missing emotion theory has teeth, not because fans want a new character, because the mind behaves like something is being managed. There's a manual, there's a train of thought. There are departments that run without anyone asking who designed them. And later stories prove the roster can change. New emotions can arrive, take seats, and alter the workflow. So what if one was always there, like just suppressed? Maybe it's shame, maybe it's love, maybe it's something too complex to let a kid feel all at once. Or maybe Pixar is simply building a flexible metaphor, not a literal roster. But if an unseen emotion has been steering the console from the shadows, then Riley's choices aren't just feelings competing, they're feelings curated. First upgrade. Remy isn't a talented rat. He's a prototype. Ratatouille doesn't just show an animal with skills, it shows an animal with systems. Remy reads cookbooks, quotes Gusteau like scripture, understands taste like chemistry, and runs a kitchen workflow better than most adults. Then it escalates. Remy pilots a human body by pulling hair like a joystick, turning Linguini into a puppet with hands. That detail is doing a lot of work, because it's not cute teamwork. It's an interface. Animal intelligence using a human as equipment. Remy is translating thought into motion, the same way later Pixar worlds translate voices, emotions, and even consciousness. Fans who map Pixar into a timeline treat that as an early upgrade moment. Animals moving from instinct to strategy. Nemo's fish plan. Doug's collar turning barks into language. Remy's flavor visions turning food into data. The pushback is obvious. Ratatouille is a heightened comedy premise. Pixar needed a way for a rat to cook, so they invented a funny control gimmick. But the implication outgrows the gag. If animals can coordinate, communicate, and even drive humans, the line between species is already cracking. So when later worlds show smarter creatures in stranger societies, Ratatouille looks less like an outlier and more like the first successful test. Aftermath. Element City doesn't feel discovered. It feels rebuilt. Look at the design. Canals that carry water like public transit, vents and heat lanes for fire citizens, glass systems that handle pressure, neighborhoods engineered for bodies that would destroy normal architecture, districts optimized for different physics. That level of customization suggests planning, like someone had to redesign civilization after the old version failed. So, the theory frames Elemental as a late chapter, a post-collapse world where the default species isn't human anymore, and the city is a second attempt at order, the kind of place you build when you're starting over and you can't use the old blueprint. Fans point to how little the film cares about human references. No humans in the margins, no explanation, just a society with its own rules, history, and infrastructure, like the world moved on. The counter-argument is fair. It's an allegory about immigration and identity, not a secret timeline clue. The city is designed to visualize difference, but allegories still leave fingerprints, and Element City's fingerprints look like adaptation, systems built to survive, not just to look pretty. If that's true, it's not just a love story in a fantasy metropolis. It's a quiet glimpse at what comes after collapse, when something new takes the keys and decides what home means. Same girl? The witch in Brave is hiding a very specific obsession. Inside her cottage, carved bears everywhere, door-shaped woodwork stacked like prototypes, and a blink and you miss it carving that looks an awful lot like Sully. Even the Pizza Planet truck cameo feels like a breadcrumb. That's why the Boo theory hits so hard. Boo grows up, learns how doors work, and then chases the one thing she lost by going backward in time until she finds a different kind of doorway. Magic. The will-o-wisps become her compass. The bear transformations become practice. The cottage becomes a lab where she's testing methods, collecting symbols, carving versions of what she remembers from the factory floor. And Brave's world is the perfect hiding place. No cameras, no records, just folklore, spellcraft, and a girl who still remembers a blue monster saying her name. Still, it might all be the oldest Pixar move. Animators planting Easter eggs for fun, not for lore. A carving is a wink, not a confession, but the emotional logic is what keeps it alive. Because if Boo is the witch, then the door system in Monsters, Inc. isn't just corporate tech. It's grief turned into engineering. And if that's true, how many doors did she build before she found the right one? Final proof. Wall-E isn't just a future, it's a warning label. The planet is dead under trash, the sky is brown, and the only thing still functioning is corporate automation. Robots cleaning, screens soothing, autopilots deciding. By and large didn't conquer Earth with armies, it did it with convenience. That's why people treat Wall-E as the end state of the everything connects idea. Consumerism turns into dependency. Dependency turns into control. Control turns into a species that can't even stand up without a chair doing the work. And the movie keeps showing how gentle the takeover is. Humans aren't imprisoned, they're distracted. The ship feeds them, entertains them, steers them, and quietly removes the need to choose. Even the captain has to discover the concept of Earth like it's forbidden knowledge. Tie that back to other Pixar patterns and it gets darker. Toys losing kids to screens, machines inheriting human cities, societies that run fine without humans in the frame at all. Officially, none of this is declared as one timeline. Pixar repeats motifs because they're fun, not because there's a master plan. But Wall-E's ending makes the theory irresistible. One plant, one small reboot, one chance to come back. So here's the uncomfortable question. In Pixar's universe, are humans the main character or just the first draft?